Welcome everyone. Today we're going to do a chair yoga sequence. This is something that is being done by request. So somebody that I know asked for this specifically, and I think it can really benefit anybody, whether you're someone who practices yoga on the mat or whether you're in a chair. This is something that you can do throughout your day, especially since most of us have jobs or do things that require a lot of sitting. So here we go. So the chair that I have doesn't have any arms, but really you can do this sequence no matter what. We're going to start out and do a bottom-up approach today, which means we're going to start with the feet and then work our way up to the top of the head and the neck. So the first thing we're going to do is just take a moment to settle in. So just comfortably placing the hands on the lap, maybe closing down the eyes, and just trying to sit up as tall as you can. Just creating a little bit of space along both sides of the spine and intentionally trying to align the cervical spine or the back of the neck up with the rest of the spine. We spend a lot of time hunching or looking at our devices, so let's try to reverse the slump and just keep everything in alignment. So inhaling through the nose, and then exhaling all the way back down. Just a few moments here. And maybe you can lengthen the breath a little bit on the inhale, maybe breathing into the belly. Trying to expand the air in the lungs a little bit more. Just noticing where the breath is, where you feel it. And then one more round. And then opening the eyes if they're closed. And we'll start with the feet. So most of us during the day, obviously we're going to have shoes on, so you can do this with your shoes too. But for purposes of today, if you have socks on like I do, or if you're barefoot, let's just press the feet into the floor and then lift all 10 toes. So keep the heel and the rest of the foot on the ground, but just lift all 10 toes and just see how that feels. And then press the toes in to the floor, into the shoes. And now let's lift the heels. Let's just go back and forth a few times, just getting a little bit of attention and movement to the feet. So lifting the toes, and this time maybe adding the balls of the feet and then rotating and lifting the heels a couple times. And then seeing if you can extend the right leg, flex the toes towards your face, and really activating that right leg here. Strong in the core, pressing the seat into your chair, flexing and then pointing maybe a couple of times, just getting some energy going through the legs. Good. All right, let's do it on the other side. So lifting that left foot, flexing the toes, which means you want your toes pointing towards you, and then pointing away a couple times here. And notice the energy in that left leg. So we're not appearing to do very much, but we're really active. We're firing off the muscles in the legs, just working on mobility, but in a more gentle way than we normally do, and then putting the foot down. Good. Next thing we're going to do is just bring that right foot on top of the left, really getting into the right hip. This is called Pigeon Pose or Square Pose. There's a lot of different variations or names for this pose. So if you can, bring the right foot on top of this left thigh, and if you can flex the toes, that's ideal. So that helps to protect the right knee. Sit up nice and tall and just see where you feel this. And notice, like right now, I'm feeling it on the right side body, right above my glute, low back. And so depending on where you're feeling this or how you're feeling this, see if maybe you can fold towards the legs. And if you are feeling enough sensation where you're at, just stay put. And then remembering to breathe. So the important part of doing any yoga sequence or any yoga class is continuing to breathe and resisting the temptation to hold your breath, because the breath is really what links the body to the mind. So if you notice there's like a stuck area or something is tight, our inclination is to tense up and to hold our breath. So just remind yourself to breathe. Slowly come on back. Unwind. Let's try the same thing on the other side. And even if you don't have time to do this entire sequence, let's say you're at work, even just maybe doing one of these poses every so often can be really beneficial. So flexing the toes again, seeing where you feel it. So before you kind of change where you're at, just take a moment to see how everything feels settling in here, and then decide whether or not you want to fold. Take a few breaths, and remember, continue to breathe here. Seeing if you can remember to lengthen the spine. So think about the top of your head extending forward in a straight line, and notice how that just creates a little bit more length along the sides of the spine. Keep breathing. Awesome. One more breath. And then slowly come on back. Good. Unwind. So for this next one, we're going to bring the right knee up and into the chest. If this is something that's not accessible, no worries, but you might be all the way up here, and obviously I'm probably got a little bit more mobility and flexibility, but another way to modify this is to take a belt or a strap or a towel, anything you have handy, and bring it behind the leg. And maybe you're just right here, but you want to engage the leg, whether you're down there, up here, bringing the knee in and trying to sit up nice and tall, press the shoulders away from the ears, and keeping this left foot down on the floor and flexing the toes. And then let's switch it out. Good job. Bringing that left knee in, sitting up nice and tall. Throughout this practice, just trying to remind yourself to keep the cervical spine lined up with the lumbar spine, the rest of the back, so that you're not hunched forward. Letting that go. Awesome job. Now we're going to twist. So we're slowly working our way up. And now we're going to move our spine in a rotation or a twisting motion. And we're going to bring the left hand to the right knee. Right hand is just going to come behind. You're going to sit up nice and tall. So inhale. And then exhale. Slowly start to rotate and look towards whatever the back of the room is or behind you is. Leading just from the chest here. And taking a few breaths. So I can hear my back crack whenever I do this. Inhaling, and then exhaling all the way back down. And reminding yourself that right shoulder, it's going to want to tend to creep up. Think of it as nice and heavy, like somebody's pressing the shoulder away from the ear. Slowly come on back. Just reset here for a minute and notice how it feels in your low back. And then same thing on the other side. So the right hand on the left knee, left hand is behind you. Inhale, nice and tall. So from the base of the spine all the way up to the crown of the head. And then on the exhale, looking behind you, twisting, just leading from the chest here. We're going to be nice and gentle, not trying to force anything. And you can do these variations throughout the day. And if you feel like you've done this in the morning and then maybe the next time you do it, you can get a little bit further into your twist. Go for it. Slowly come on back. And now let's work on our shoulders and that area right in between the shoulder blades, which tends to be a very, very sore spot for most people. People get like those upper back knots, and it can cause a lot of tension headaches again, especially since we're sitting usually, even if it's just slight, in front of our computers or our devices throughout the day. So sitting up again, nice and tall, aligning the spine, continuing to breathe. We're going to bring both arms out here, palms face down. We're going to take the left underneath the right, and depending on how tight or how much mobility and range of motion you have in your shoulders, you can either just give yourself a hug like this, or you can see if you can clasp the hands and come on up. And I know you're not able to see me here. And then bringing the elbows up and just noticing how that feels behind the shoulders. Maybe you want to fold forward a little bit, creating just a little bit more space here. And then continuing to breathe. And then slowly come up, unwind, and maybe bring the arms all the way out and up and then down. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So this time we're going to bring left underneath the right. This is one option here, bringing the elbows up and then maybe folding over, just really trying to get that space right behind the shoulder blades. Or you can bring the hands together and clasp. Elbows up if that feels okay, and then folding forward, really getting into the upper part of the back. Coming on back, and then releasing, setting the hands down here for just a moment to see how that feels. And just because we're sitting doesn't mean that we can't do a little bit of strengthening for the shoulders and the upper back here. So we're just going to bring the arms out to the side, and we're going to inhale, and we're going to bring the arms all the way up. Notice how my fingertips are nice and active. I want to remind you to press your feet into the floor. So lifting all 10 toes and then pressing the toes back into the floor. So think about the energy starting at the feet, going all the way up the legs and the core, all the way to the fingertips. So just really nice and active here. And now press the shoulders back and away from the ears. So we're opening this up. This is like a goalpost position, really exaggerating, trying to squeeze the shoulder blades together. And then inhaling up. We're going to do that 5 more times. Breathe as we move, and slow and intentional. So really opening up the front of the shoulders. Maybe you want to look up a little bit as you do this, if that's okay, in the neck. Inhale up, exhale, goalpost. A few more times, inhale. Maybe you're starting to notice that you're building some heat in the upper back. Continue to breathe, go at your own pace. Do what feels good in your body. And then coming back to goalpost. We're going to just kick it up a notch one more time, and we're going to straighten the arms out, almost like they're at a 45-degree angle, and then opening and closing the wrists. So a lot of us probably spend a lot of time at a keyboard, and this can really just bring some circulation and attention to the wrists and the hands. And I know your arms might be getting tired. That's okay. We're trying to help increase some circulation too here. Couple more breaths. Good job, you guys. And then slowly bring everything down. Take a moment here. Check in, see how everything feels. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to just give a little bit of attention to the sides of our neck. So our vagus nerve, which I talk about pretty frequently because it's such an important part of helping ourselves to regulate our nervous system. It starts at the base of the brain and it innervates into our organs and into our gut. But what it also does is it runs along the sides of the neck and into our face. And a lot of times if we're operating in that fight or flight, a lot of times the muscles in this area can constrict. And so we can really help to promote that parasympathetic nervous system response by trying to improve that vagal tone. And this is one of the ways to do it. So sitting up nice and tall, bringing the left ear to the left shoulder. And just figuring out where you need to stop. Because you don't want to feel pain or pulling, but you do want to feel a nice stretch or sensation along the right side. We're going to stay here for a few breaths, so maybe 5 breaths. Just giving this right side of the neck time to open up and release. And again, if you notice that this right shoulder is creeping up towards the ear, you want to make sure that you press it down and away. Heavy shoulder away from the right ear. If you want to close your eyes. So you can stay put, stay right where you're at, or if you'd like to add a little bit of a variation here, if you want to look up and to the left to like the 45-degree angle, you're going to open up the front part of the neck just a little bit more, and again, shoulder away from the ear. Continuing to breathe. It's a really good idea to at least try to do this for about 30 seconds. One last breath. And then slowly come up, nice and slow, because sometimes when we come out of a pose, especially with the neck, I want you to be really careful because you might actually feel more sensation on the way out of it. So when you're ready, maybe roll the shoulders back. Let's do the same thing on the other side. So right ear, right shoulder, a nice stretch along the side of the neck. And if you want to add that variation by looking up to the right, so just think about you're turning to a 45-degree angle, just opening up this front part of the neck. Just be really careful when you're doing this. And when you're ready, just moving nice and slow here, coming back up and just noticing how everything feels, opening the eyes if they're closed like mine were. Checking in. The last thing that we're going to do is just a forward fold. And so be really careful. It depends on your hamstring and your low back flexibility. I'm going to scoot a little bit forward into my chair here. So I want you to go to what's called a cat back. So you're pressing the shoulders back, opening up, really stretching the upper back, and then pressing the chest forward. And this is called cat. So we have something called cat-cow in yoga that we normally do on all fours on the mat, but you can do a variation here. So breathe and move a few times in cat-cow before we do our forward fold. Good. And then come on back to a neutral spine, and then slowly press your back towards that cat back. And then kind of depending on your range of motion, just slowly start to kind of slide the hands down the shins. Maybe they go all the way to the feet and the floor. And then depending on how this feels, maybe you can hang the head and take a couple of breaths. Slowly come back up. One last time, let's bring the arms all the way out to the side, all the way up. Fingertips are long and strong. Maybe one more time, pressing the chest forward to that goalpost. Inhaling all the way up and then bringing the hands back on the lap. And let's just take a moment here, see how everything feels. Maybe we're able to lengthen our breath a little bit more. Maybe it's a little bit smoother. Maybe we've got some of the energy flowing a little bit more than when we started. And just know that you can do anything that we did in these past few minutes, maybe even just picking one thing to do like every hour or so. It's a great idea, especially if you're going to do these kinds of things while you're at work, is to try to get up out of your chair about every hour. And if you can't get up out of your chair, you've got some great options, maybe picking one of the things out of what we did to do a couple of times throughout the day. Thank you for joining me. Namaste.